All right, guys, here is my first interview on the Running with Dr. Will podcast with Dalzell from Coros. Initially, when I tried Coros, this is 3 or 4 years ago now, the original Apex, and I was like, I'm not sold. I think it's kind of really lacking compared to Garmin, which I was using at the time. And subsequently, I've used kind of off and on, I've switched between the two until I have just bought the Apex Pro 2, and then alongside the Coros native ecosystem in which Derek and I talk about with their Evo Lab metrics and their training data and analytics, which is all free, I'm kind of like, I think I can see where the future's going in terms of watch system or training system surpassing Garmin. Now, look, Garmin's still amazing, and I'm not going to say that they're not, because my wife uses one, and I think the Phoenix 7 and the new 6965 is really amazing. But I think this discussion isn't really about what watch you should buy. It is about how you can use training load to better, analyze and prescribe your training and just monitor these different systems and energy systems and training zones so that you can, develop your running further. And Derek's a super switched on guy about all of this. So thanks heaps to Derek for coming on. If you're interested in getting a Coros or you want to know my opinions, DM me on Instagram at Dr. Will O'Connor. Check out at Coros Global and link in the description below. Anyway, not too long. Here you go. All right, Derek, welcome. Good to have you on. You're actually my first guest on the Running with Dr. Will podcast, so this is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm happy to be here. We've had some great conversations in the past, so excited to be on the podcast, talk with you, share some details about Koros, and just chat further.
For you, like, who or what is Coros?
Sure. So first and foremost, my role at Koros is really to educate the global athletic and coaching community on how to best use our training software to better their performance. So for me, Coros is simple. It's the best training brand on the market. We are positioning ourselves to work with both beginner and elite athletes and coaches to further athletic performance. And so really everything that we do is about unlocking what is possible within athletic performance and what are the next steps to achieving that next milestone.
Okay. And this is something that really interested me because you haven't really mentioned anything about hardware or we make watches.
Sure.
So how do the
There's a lot of
watches fit in?
companies. Sorry about that. What's that?
How do the watches fit in?
Well, there's a lot of companies that make watches and a lot of really great companies that make watches. We obviously pride ourselves on our battery life, our durability, our accuracy, and yes, we make GPS watches, but our watches are really just the hardware needed on your body to track your biometrics. And so, like I could give you a long spiel about our battery life. That's probably what most people know us for, or our lightweight Pace 2 for road running, or our dual frequency GPS for trail running. But again, there's hundreds of companies that make GPS watches. We feel confident in our approach that we are maximizing our training solutions. And the watch, the hardware, is really just the vessel to provide you all the data needed to enhance your performance.
Right. And what we're going to talk about is training load, right? And this is an interesting one. You'd mentioned to me like, oh yeah, training to load for when you know the training load of an event, whatever event you're training for, like you can use that in your training rather than, these arbitrary measures we've been using for decades now. Weekly time, weekly distance. So can you break down, I guess, training load and how's it measured? Like how do we incorporate, like what are we looking at when we're talking training load? I think a lot of people know training load. They're like, oh yeah, it's like the load. But can't we just use distance?
I would actually counter you and say a lot of people don't know what training load is, which is why I'm here talking to you today, because we need to educate everybody on There is a way to monitor the stress on your body from every workout that is quantifiable and based off your own effort. And so a lot of people, whether you're, I don't know, I was talking to a pro athlete at dinner in Boulder last year, and he was telling me about running 100 miles a week, right? Or like
Of
150
course,
kilometers a
that's
week.
the number.
Okay. Yeah. So for a beginner, that's outrageous. For a pro, they love to talk about it. For your beginner athlete, right? If you want to run a 5K, you're like, okay, I need to build up to 5K or 3.1 miles. That's like, but those 3.1 miles or those 5K is different if you're in, if you're in Belgium or if you're in Denver, Colorado, right? Like the terrain, the temperature, the elevation, the altitude, like a mile is not a mile. 30 minutes is not 30 minutes. 10K is not 10K for everybody in every environment. But the stress on your body is the stress on your body. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to train through all of your training long term. So, what we are actively doing at Coros is we are putting a strong educational campaign around training load to showcase why individuals should be focusing on the stress on their body rather than these arbitrary measures such as distance or time, because distance and time is not created equally based on where you are around the globe.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, just within your own neighborhood, you have trail running. You know, you could be on the trail, you could be on the road, you could be stopping at stoplights, you could be, yeah, so your time, everything could be different. So if we kind of understand that, like, how would it help though? Like, how
Sure.
is it
I
gonna,
love
that's the
it.
end thing, right? It's like, well, is it gonna make me run faster?
Yeah. So ultimately, you are training to put stress on your body so your body can adapt, right? So, really, the only point of training is to stress your body so then you recover, you adapt stronger. So, I'm going to use Killian Jornet and Hayden Hawks as examples.
Oh,
And
Hayden
they have,
was just here
okay, fantastic.
for
So,
the Tarawera.
yeah, yep. And so I was able to write analysis reports on both Killian at UTMB and Hayden Hawks, Western States. And so so Killian Jornet's average training load, right, over over the last few months before UTMB was about 156 training load per day. All right, that's just an arbitrary number.
Yep.
Hayden Hawk's average training load over the last couple months before Western States was 210. So, like, first and foremost, right, it shows that this number can be unique to you and what your body can handle. So that's important. But why I bring up those two use cases is because Killian won UTMB, Hayden got second at Western States. Those are both extremely successful races. Knowing where they were last year now gives them their North Star for this year of, hey, if I want to perform at my best, I need to be at these numbers at least, right? And so for Killian, he trains in Norway with like, I'm not joking, like 10,000 feet of elevation every other day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or like 5,000 meters of gain. And so for him to train by time or distance would be crazy. But what he can do is he can train with this metric training load and essentially measure the stress on his body day in and day out to ensure that he is where he needs to be when he gets back into running. Same thing for Hayden in the US or running all across the globe. But training load gives you a very specific number to how much have I stressed my body in the past? How fit am I now? And if you have the historical data, right, over 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, then you can use your historical data now to inform your future training, which is fantastic.
Right. So I guess, yeah, how are we measuring this number? So the number's arbitrary. Like mine could be 5, Hayden Hawks could be 210. We both run a race, right? We both do personal best efforts. Let's say we both do a 10K, we both get PBs. He needs to focus on his number, whatever that is. I focus on my number. Could be massively different, but we've got these numbers. But how are we getting to those numbers?
Yeah, we probably should have started here. So training load is based off your effort times duration. And for us, effort most of the time is based off your heart rate, right? So let me put it this way. Say Will goes out for a 1 hour run at his easy heart rate, right?
Yep.
And so you have 60 minutes at your easy heart rate zone. Let's just say it gives you a 100 train load. You could go out and do a 45-minute run in your threshold zone and have a 150 training load, right? And
Yep.
so essentially it's just your intensity times duration creates your training load. And when you start to identify as an athlete what types of runs or what type of workouts create, different training load quantities, you can begin to really strategize your training and your approach to building fitness. And that's really key because a lot of athletes haven't gotten to that point yet of associating a specific workout with the amount of stress on their body. And when you start to comprehend, like, hey, my 4 mile run, hey, my 10K run, hey, my 2 hour ride gives me this training load, now you can start to build out your weeks or your months in advance and really ensure you're progressing as an athlete. But to answer your question, intensity times duration equals training load. This is probably the most important metric for anybody to understand that's truly using data to improve.
Yeah. So one thing I'd say to that is, what happens when our heart rate goes haywire? Like it happens to everyone, right?
Mhm.
So what, like, yeah, what can we rely on? Like, what happens in that scenario?
So fortunately at Coros, we have a very talented sports science team. And we do rely on heart rate quite often. When heart rate gets outside of specific historical parameters for you that we know heart rate just, I don't know, the accuracy has fallen off for that run for whatever reason, we can bring pace into the equation and we can still calculate a training load with a specific algorithm. We're not going to get into what all those algorithms are because each company has their own. But I will say that heart rate, if it's accurate, we will use that. If it's not, we'll tap into these other metrics to provide the appropriate stress that your body received.
Right. Okay. So, because I read there's a white paper by First Beat Analytics who underlie the back end of like Garmin and Sunto and I'm not sure who else, but yeah, they do something similar. Like there's nothing similar for Chorus to read up on, but yeah, they essentially can identify outliers. Like if you were running a 5 minute mile and your heart rate's 120, like it's like that's almost impossible, and you can identify that within the realm. That's good. That's because part of like risk-based heart rate is you get these anomalies all the time, and I find it really frustrating in
Yeah.
my data when you have, it just when you're looking at because you talk about training load distribution and things, and it's something that your training hub, the Coros training hub, does really well in identifying like your time in specific, like time in a lot of different zones, time in what distance, like how often are you running between, you know, 3 miles and 6 miles, or like 5K and 10K? How often are you running between like, yeah, 6 miles and 10 miles? Like all that, I never really considered that, but going through it, I can see real holes in my training where it kind of, where I'd converge on, you just, you get into it and maybe you miss this workout because whatever, there's a club run or you got work or whatever. And you go, actually, because I missed that run twice and then it was a recovery week, those two workouts, you actually identify that there's nothing in, I hadn't had my heart rate up between 160, 170, say like zone 4-ish for me. I'd done lots of zone 3 and a bit of zone 6, but like nothing there because I missed these workouts. And that's like, yeah, you can identify kind of load, or I guess like progress through there. um and then, so, but I still use time and distance.
Sure. I mean, I use time and distance in specific use cases. I mean, there's no one secret to training that fits all molds and at all times of the year with every athlete, right? So like as coaches, we have to have this robust tool set at our disposal to know when to use time, when to use distance, when to use heart rate, when to use training load, all these things. I will say though that regardless at what point of the year you're in or what metric you're using, the long-term view for me in my coaching career has always come back to how much stress am I putting on the body. And that will always come back to training load, to look at my peaks of the season, to look at multiple peaks throughout the season. How did I recover from them? What was my fatigue at these training loads? What did my off season look like? And so regardless if I'm not going to lie to you, I went out for I'm coming off an illness right now. I went out for a 35-minute run this morning and I didn't care what my train load said. I just wanted to go out for 35 minutes. Right. But the beautiful thing is that my watch still got the train load for me. So when I want to go back and look in 3 weeks how my build has been back from this illness, like I'll have that data there to reflect on. Right. And so in the moment, it was a 35-minute run, but 3 weeks from now, today's 90 training load from the run makes a lot more sense when I'm looking at the trends.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway because I did there's a blog I wrote when I got injured. I got a sacral stress fracture last year, and the two real key, I did a podcast actually on the differences I made building up for Tarawera for this 100K. One, I got injured, and then this one, I ended up getting a heat stroke, but my training was amazing. And I'd said previously when I got injured, I did a 4-week block where normally I do 3-week blocks. And not only that, like the condensed nature of my load, not regardless of distance or time, but actually load of these workouts I was doing was really, really condensed because of like Christmas travel. And so subsequently, like I got injured. I think that was the reason why. And then this time it ended up being almost a 5-week load, but actually, 5 weeks of high volume, but actually 1 week I removed all intensity. And just through the nature of the runs that I was doing, a couple of them were flat, so they were a bit longer. Then it looks like, if you're looking on Strava, you look at my distance or my time graph, it looks like I just had this massive 5-week block. But you look at my training load graph on like a Coros Hub or a Training Peaks or something, and you see the kind of the real drop by about 20 or 30%, despite the fact that distance or time is there. And that's where I see people, you can speak to this, really fall off or their training. So they'll have this number, 50 miles, 80K, whatever the number is, 5 hours, 7 hours. And as they get tired, they start chasing that number, reducing the quality of their training. And actually, they might be hitting that number, but the load is just like consistently dropping. And all the quality evaporates. So if someone's thinking, yeah, that's me, like I really just have no idea what I'm doing out there. I'm trying to hit 3 by 60-minute runs, a 90-minute run, and one of those needs to be a workout. How can they use training load?
Sure. Well, here's a plug for Coros. Go by Coros and use the training hub. But no, seriously. So what you need to do, right, is you need to start monitoring every single one of your workouts with this type of data. Ideally, it's from Coros, but there's other companies out there that they all do a good job. I'm not going to sit here and say they don't, but you need to start tracking the data because for this athlete that does the 3 by 60 minutes a week, the 90-minute run, the 120-minute run, right? There's going to be an inflection point in their training where this is not providing them the stress that it used to, and they will hit a plateau. And when they hit that plateau, they will still think, man, I'm training a lot. But as you know, they'll start to become stale. They'll start to reduce their performance. They're still going to think they're training a lot. So now the mental fatigue comes into play. Before you know it, you start dealing with just lack of motivation. And then you get into this really bad headspace. And so training load, right? Let's take this one step further. Training load, when you add it together for 42 days, you get your base fitness. And that's really like your long-term fitness. And so over time, this athlete, right, that needs to start tracking this, just go out, do your normal runs, just see how your body's responding, see the level of stress you get on it. But long term, more than 42 days, right, rolling average, we're going to start seeing is this training actually enough to take me to the next level? Am I really stressing my body to become more fit, or have I hit a plateau? And what you'll find with a lot of average runners, or even some like sub-elite runners, is they get up to this really high point of fitness and then they just kind of stay there for like 5 to 6 months, and their performance just dwindles and dwindles and dwindles because they're not stressing their body anymore. They're not adapting to the next level, but they're going through this continual like mental fatigue of going out for training. And it gets to the end of the season, they're like, man, what happened? Well, what happened was you stopped progressing as an athlete because you weren't stressing your body enough. So this all comes back to training load is extremely important. And if you're not tracking your workouts with a watch that allows you to do this, then you're missing half the picture. And long term, it really should be your guiding North Star. It should be telling you, how much harder do I need to work to continue to improve my fitness? And if you don't know that, then you're just guessing. And that's as the as an employee working for Coros that's in charge of global education. Like, my main goal is to educate every athlete globally on how to improve. And the one takeaway from this podcast should be: track your runs, allow data to accumulate, and look at it. Like, are you stressing your body enough, or are you just constantly in that plateau phase, getting stale and losing performance?
Right. So what we could do for that athlete who's kind of hitting the same kind of training week in, week out, is you can look at maybe reducing the load of one of those 60-minute runs and then really maximizing the load in another. Because, a lot of people, they're limited by time. Time
Mhm.
in two phases: time in actual workout, and then time and ability to recover. Like, so they might have 90 minutes to run, but they can't recover from 90 minutes every day. So, and that's what I've been looking at. It's like, can we, and this is something I've done recently, is actually reduce the load of some of those, your standard 30 to 60-minute runs, just your aerobic kind of base building runs. But I've been able to maximize the load on those whatever threshold workouts. And so overall, I get a better stimulus, and the load is actually higher at the end of the week. And I think this is where load is really important, because otherwise you might think, okay, I'll push up to make sure I'm getting a 7.5 minute mile on this run, even though that's not easy. Your heart rate might be high. You get a good training load for it. You can see it if you are monitoring training load. Otherwise, you just know it's going to look good on Strava. And then you get to your 3x3K or whatever it is, 4x2 mile, and you're just not able to hit those times. You're off by 10 seconds a mile, you're 5 seconds per K. And so then your load's actually lower there. And then that's what you're talking about, where week on week, it just ends up being like, I don't want to say unproductive, but not as effective and efficient.
Unproductive for performance, not unproductive for physical fitness and health, right? Two differences.
That is, yeah.
And so let's take this one step further. So now you are talking about specificity of events and performance, right? So you're talking about your 3x3 minutes or your threshold runs. And so what you alluded to earlier was Coros Training Hub allows you to look at your time and zones. So how a 5K or a 10K runner trains is very different than how a 800-meter runner trains, which is very different than how an ultra marathoner trains, right? And so if you can, if you're tracking training load and you understand how stressful it is on your body, what you can do is you can start to identify, hey, what zones am I training the most in? What zone is required for the performance of my event, right? A 10K is threshold. An ultra marathon is your aerobic endurance, your base. An 800 is really unique. It's right between your VO2 and your anaerobic capacity. So you can ensure that as you get closer to your event, your training load in your specific zone is now increasing as well. So you can ensure not only am I getting more fit, but I'm also meeting the demands of the event I'm training for. I'm specifically training for better performance in this specific event. And so if you looked at Killian Jornet's data, we just wrote a blog last week about his off-season training data, but he gets about 60% of all training in his zone one. because if you think about it, the events that he's doing are all like long distance ultra marathon, right? It wouldn't really benefit him to do a lot of zone 6 training. Like, sure, there's strides and whatnot for for purposes, but that's not the bulk of his training. He does 60% zone 1, he does like 25% zone 2, 25 like 15% like zone 3, and then very little in the above zones. But then if you looked at, some of our 800 meter runners that we work with, prepping for the world championships or the Olympic games, like they're going to have far more time in their zone 4, zone 5, zone 6 compared to zone 1 or zone 2, because they're specifically training in those zones. And so this all comes back to tracking your train load, making sure you're training the appropriate zones for your race. Um, and to your point, when you have key sessions for your event, making sure that you actually have the energy and the recovery needed to hit those key sessions.
Yeah. So that's really good. I think that's really good insight for someone to get started with. And even without a Coros, you can get onto the training hub, right? And have a look at it all.
So you need a Coros account to get onto the Train Hub. So you'd have to download the app to get in there. You can import fit files from different companies. So say you have a bunch of fit files from, I don't know,
A
3
fit
of the other
file
ones.
being just the file version, file
Yep.
type of whatever you get on your whatever gets pushed through to Strava. It's that's kind of
Yeah.
thing.
You can use the Train Hub with other files. I will tell you, it's far easier just to get the Coros watch and utilize it. And that's not me trying to sell it. I'm just telling you that the user experience is far better. But yeah, the Coros Train Hub will have all this information. You can import your old files. Your Coros watch, you literally just hit start. You go out for your run, you hit stop. It automatically syncs to your phone, which sends it to the cloud, which is on the Train Hub. I can't remember the last time I manually updated a workout. It just automatically is on the desktop for me, which is great. So it is a really easy to use platform, and all these metrics are there to help everybody.
Right. And so in terms of Chorus, what is anything coming up? Anything we should know? You can share here. Like if someone's like, oh, this sounds like a bit of me. I do need a new watch because we can only spend money on a couple of things: shoes,
Mhm.
watches, and entry fees. So should
Uh,
they be
Coros,
buying a one ASAP, or is anything they're like, oh, maybe I'll wait till the end of the month?
Coros always has great stuff coming out. I would feel comfortable telling you that we have something coming out to better track your metrics in all activities. So in the next couple of months, we'll have something else coming out to help ensure accuracy across like all 29 of our activities that we have. So I don't know, any active movement, this product would help you collect more accurate data. And then later on in the year, we'll have some really cool stuff coming out, but that's later on in the year. So, like, if you need something now, no need to wait. But I would say the back half of 2023 is going to be really fun at Coros.
So for the yeah, your standard runner, what would be your recommendation if you go kind of budget, not budget, but like standard and then advanced? Where would you what would you be your recommendations?
What, in regards to our watches?
Yeah, sorry for like a Chorus watch.
Well, so our watches don't think of the price point as one's better than the other. Our watches are built for different activities, right? So our Pace 2, all of our Olympic road runners and pro road runners use the Pace 2 because it's the lightest weight GPS watch with everything needed for on-road activity. The Apex 2 Pro is probably I think it's the coolest watch that we have. I mean, it's what I'm wearing right now, but
That's what I'm
um,
wearing too.
yeah, our heart rate sensor is really dialed in with it, which is really nice. But it's a mix of on road and trail performance, but it brings the navigation to the mix. So you have navigation. And then our Vertex 2 is technically our most expensive, but it's really built for those ultra runners, expeditions up Everest, like backcountry. It has 140 hours of full GPS use. So um, don't think of it as which one's more advanced. Think of it as what activities do I really want to what activities do I do, and what do I need my tool? What do I need my GPS watch to provide me with? So If you're a road runner, Pace 2. If you're a trail runner that does some road, Apex 2 Pro. And if you're a backpacker, get the Vertex 2.
The Pace 2 is like an easy like first up recommendation for me, for someone. Because I've got one, and it blew my mind. I was like, how there's value plus in that thing. It's incredible. It's like if you're not like super tech savvy, and like a lot of this is like, oh, I don't know. It's like start with that watch. Like if you're not going to do maps and stuff, get that watch, and you'll have everything you need. You got all the back end stuff. I was like seriously impressed. Like you can add on all the third party sensors and everything. It's cool, man.
Yeah, it's I know it's going to come across as like I work for Coros because I do. The Pace 2 hands down is I'm not joking. The Pace 2 is maybe the best value performance watch on the market, not even close. It's $200 in the US. I mean, every country has their own conversion on that, but 200 in the US, you get access to everything. You just don't have navigation, but if you know who Eliud Kipchoge is, I mean, this is what he uses. It works for him, along with all of our other pro road runners. And then the one thing that I do want to highlight is everything that we do above that is all a value add. So the Coros Training Hub is free. There's no subscription fee. Like if you're a coach, you can bring as many assistant coaches on as you want. There's no subscription fee. Everything we do at Coros is about providing you with the watch, the hardware up front, but then over delivering on the back end in regards to all these training metrics, training solutions, the training hub, access to connect to a coach, all these firmware updates that get sent to your app every 2 months to basically improve the quality of your experience. So it really is. We kind of trying to stay away from saying this of the watch gets better over time because it's a great purchase when you initially make it, right? But with everything that we continue to add to it, I truly do believe that your time with Coros only gets better the longer you're with it.
I'd have to agree because I initially bought one a few years back now, and I was like, I don't know. Then I got another one, and like the iteration process was like, now I'm happy. Now I'm happy to recommend it. Beforehand, I was like, oh look, like the maps suck, and this I can't remember whatever else it was that sucks. And now it's like, oh, that's all fixed. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, now that the maps come straight in from Strava routes, like if you're a subscription member, it's like, yeah, that's dialed. Love it.
That's fair. I don't think anybody at Coros would say differently. We started in 2016 as a company, and we really only got into GPS watches in 2018. So, I mean, all those criticisms are fair. I think to our credit, we identify what consumers need, what athletes need, what coaches need, and we work really hard to make it happen. So, if anybody listening to this has an issue with something on their Coros or you'd like to see something added, like we are very accessible. Just reach out to us and we'll talk to the development team and see what we can make happen.
Sweet. That sounds amazing. So, where can people follow along? Maybe with you personally, or obviously with Coros Training, the hub, whatever.
Yeah, so I would direct everybody if you're interested in this, we have the training blog on our website which we are updating weekly with content on how to help you better train. And so that's coros.com, www.coros.com. You can also follow us on social media at Coros Global, at Coros Global. But really, our initiative this year and going forward is to help athletes understand how to better train and utilize our metrics. So if you're into this, you like the podcast, just follow our social media, read the training blog, and we'll continue to provide you with tips and tricks on how to continue to improve as an athlete.
Yeah, actually, I'll link to two really good blogs that you wrote, breaking down the data of like Killian's UTMB win, and then Eliud Kipchoge's pacer for his like 201 marathon. Not Eliud, but
Yeah, so if I'm in a great spot at Coros where I get to work with these athletes and really get to peek behind the curtain and they allow me to write articles. So going into this year, we are coming out with our More Than Split series, which we just launched our first one with Killian Jornet's off-season training concepts. We have another one coming out about Joe Klecker's 12:54 5K in the US a few weeks ago, looking at his training leading into
12:54.
it.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, yeah. So second fastest time
Most people
US.
are like literally trying to do double that time. Like, like a 25-minute 5K. That's not bad. That's all right.
Yeah, a lot of people like peeking behind the curtain of what these pros go through with training. And so we get access from the athletes. They provide us, the ability to write about it. And so we are going to be featuring a lot of athletes' data this year. So if you want to see how the pros train, how they perform, what their data looks like, to maybe give you a better idea of what yours, the trends should look like. Your numbers aren't going to be the same, but the trends could be the same. Uh, just stay tuned, follow the training blog, follow our social media. We will make, post when those are ready, but it's pretty cool. A lot of people like seeing that kind of stuff.
All right. That's awesome. I'll link to all of that in the description. All right, Derek. Catch you later.
All right. Thanks, Will. See ya.